with Michael Duke. I'm your host, and we're really fortunate today to have Dave McGlennen with us, the founder of Emerging Leader Inner Circles. Dave, thank you so much for being with us. I hope you don't mind. You go by Dave or David?
David's fine. Yeah, that's great.
David's
Thanks,
fine.
Michael.
Great.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm really excited for the conversation today.
Yeah, so begin us off here. You told me you're from Pittsburgh. They got a great baseball team in Pittsburgh, some good craft breweries there. It's a great town. So tell me about yourself, your life in Pittsburgh, and your business.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm actually not a native of Pittsburgh, but I have been here for about 17 years. I spent the vast majority of my life in the state of Indiana, back in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I was in the insurance industry for about 32 years and transitioned out of that industry into what I'm doing now in developing emerging leaders, helping grow cultures and create high performing cultures. And so, Pittsburgh is a great place. It's a great town, of course, for sports, but it's a great town as well for growing a business, to be honest. So I'm excited to be able to share my experience with your listeners today.
Awesome, awesome. When I was looking at your profile, you've got a lot of experience in revenue, right? Driving revenue.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
to me, I came up through sales and sales management.
Mhm.
So that's kind of my bent. And then the last 20 years just kind of backed in to one of the things I do is executive recruiting. So I work for
Sure.
business owners. And I got to tell you, I think one of the hardest things to find is a good salesperson because they're all great talkers in the interview process, and so few of them actually know how to sell. Tell me a little bit about your background, how you rose up through the ranks. If you have, there's probably people that are going to hear this that are salespeople, that are sales managers. What have you learned to help identify great salespeople, train them? And I tell you, in all the recruiting I've done, I think the hardest position to recruit for is sales manager, sales leader.
Mm.
So I'd love to
Mhm.
get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. A number of different thoughts kind of come through my head. One of my very first mentors was my dad, and uh, he had this saying that David, God gave you two ears and one mouth, so you need to listen twice as much as you speak. And so I guess that really hit home because I really enjoy listening in a conversation, and I really think that that has been one of my strengths in my sales and business development process over the years. And so I think that by virtue of listening to a prospect, if you're the salesperson, and asking good question, allowing your curiosity to lead you and to drive the conversation. I think that probably is at least my definition of a great salesperson, because it establishes rapport. It allows for a conversation and really for the salesperson to truly help the other individual who it has a problem. I mean, we're solving problems. Sales is really solving problems, and so I think that that is what I see as probably the biggest strength for any salesperson, is to truly listen and be able to talk in the moment and to be able to process quickly what you're hearing, and then create the talking points or the response to that particular conversation. So that's the thing I would think is the key to a great salesperson. And when it comes to a sales leader or a sales manager, I honestly think the same thing is true, except that what you're doing is you're leading your sales team instead of leading a prospect. But it's still human to human interaction. It's still conversation, and it's still being able to hear what the other person is saying, and then ask curious and great questions to be able to then come to a solution or come to the right termination point, I guess.
Yeah. But what you're saying is really counterintuitive because
It is.
stereotypically we associate great salespeople with being great talkers.
Right.
And I think non-salespeople struggle with hiring great salespeople because they come in, the candidate's a great talker. Man, this person could talk to anybody, never met a stranger, as if that's the main key prerequisite, right? And so you're basically saying the opposite. And I agree.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
But so in a I'd love to get tactical where with somebody like yourself that's experienced. So, have you learned a tip or a method to identify a person in an interview or selection process that is a better listener,
Mhm.
that has kind of honed that skill to become an art?
Yeah. I think I think one of the keys is just listening to the questions that someone asks me, because if there's a curiosity part of that question and it's not just a canned question, I think that that is something that I listen for, not only just for a salesperson but really for um, any leader, to be honest. I mean, any leader who allow their curiosity just to lead them in the conversation. I think that's the key trait for me, to be able to show me, hey, I've got someone who is is present and cares and is asking some really great questions.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good stuff. Uh, Going back to the sales leader. So I'm kind of thinking, I've never really thought about it that way, that it'd be a similar person. I know that almost never is the best candidate within a team for sales manager the best salesperson.
Right, right.
I don't know how you'd like to respond to that. When people ask me, it's like how you identify great salespeople. I say look for the person who's naturally other centered, right? The
Mhm.
person that's the informal leader. Hey, you go to them for a question. You go, how do you do this? What's your method of doing that? And they may be the B plus salesperson,
Right.
but they have a natural bent to helping others.
Yeah.
And one of one of the worst terminations I've ever had in my leadership career was a guy who was 10, 15 years older than I was, but I hired him to be a sales manager. The reason I hired him is because he came in and was selling me. He was a vendor to my business that I was running. Um, and I was so impressed with him that I said, hey, do you want to, are you looking for a job? And so just to cut to the end of the story, I said he would go out with my salespeople, and my battery's running down here. He'd go out with my salespeople. Thank you, and he wanted to be the elephant hunter. He
Ah,
wanted to go get the candidate ready, but then he would go back to close the deal. So he lived for the close, right?
interesting.
And I
Yeah,
said,
sure.
I need somebody to train my people. I don't need somebody just to go,
Yeah.
you know, beat your chest that you closed the biggest deal of the year. I don't
Right.
have you found I don't know. I'd be curious what your thoughts on, on how you've seen leaders emerge within teams, how you've seen leaders come in and either fail miserably, because sometimes the best lesson is to know what not to look for, right? Or
Yeah,
to know
right.
what's bad. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that? I'm gonna plug my laptop in here before it goes dead.
Yeah, sure, sure. Well, I guess the thing is, I think that um any sales leader has to be basically a servant leader. They have to have an attitude that is serving, because um, if they don't, then their heart's not in the right place, to be honest. I mean, I think that any manager, any sales manager has to be, as you said, others focused, and has to be looking at helping the other person to develop. And it's not about them, but it's that other person, and looking at what their potential is, and maybe where their strengths are, and then where their areas of development are as well, and to be able to then pull those out of them really in equal measures, because feedback isn't just about, and this is something that's kind of uh, maybe a little bit of a different approach, but I don't see feedback as positive and negative. I see it as all positive. It's just that one side is motivational, the other side is developmental. So
Hmm.
there's a place where, where if I get feedback on something that I need to develop in, that's still positive for me because I maybe I didn't know that and I needed to hear that. On the other side, maybe I was doing something well and that helped me to motivate me more. And so I think that a good sales manager and a good sales leader needs to be able to take feedback and create both the motivational feedback and the developmental feedback. I'm not sure if that I'm trying to I think I might have
No,
went down a side trail, but
no, but I
that's what
love
I
that.
see. Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of convergence here. So for 20 years, I know you do coaching now, right?
Yeah, I do.
And leadership development. I've done the same, and I have a program called the Coaching Mindset, and just to tie the two thoughts together. So let's just say you get a high school football coach. High school football coach puts his team out on the field. He calls a play, and if a player doesn't do his job right, he may substitute that player and bring him over to the sidelines, and we say coach him up a little bit, right?
Sure, sure.
Sometimes he might be a little stern, point his finger, maybe raise his voice, but a good coach never apologizes for coaching, right?
Right.
That's their job. And
Right.
so I've kind of developed that premise over the years. I've been doing this for about 14 years now because I see too many people in the business world apologize for coaching.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're conflict avoidant, they're indirect, they're vague, and people need exactly what you said. They need the feedback so that they can develop, so that they can know what they're doing well. And so I love that. In my opinion, if there is one skill that supervisors and managers would develop, is just the ability to be candid, to be frank,
That's
to
right.
be plain spoken, while being courteous, while being kind.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's interesting, Michael, because as you say that, it triggered a thought in my mind around culture, and one of the behaviors I see in high performing cultures is this ability to speak straight, and oftentimes when I say those words, speak straight, there's a notion or perhaps a perception where speaking straight is just giving somebody a piece of my mind, and
Hmm.
that's not really it at all. Speaking straight in a culture where we speak straight, it's actually moving a situation forward. In other words, it's moving someone from where they are to where they need to be, or a situation from where it is to where it needs to be. So speaking straight is simply giving feedback or having an honest conversation that, yeah, it may give you a pit in your stomach, but it allows that situation to be moving forward so that the team can grow and the team can move forward. And so I love that because I think that too often leaders, both sales leaders and business leaders, shy away from that speaking straight. And the problem often though is that they go directly to speak straight, and really what often needs to come first is to listen generously. And so kind of those two fundamentals or those two behaviors actually go hand in hand in my view.
Yeah, well, I'm loving this conversation. So let me kind of go off on a bit of a tangent, build on what you said. So
Sure.
um, I love assessments. I've been using assessments since my Auto Trader days. And so
Yeah.
75% of the people in business are conflict avoidant, right?
Hmm.
75%.
Hmm.
And that's give or take a few points, right? And those that are not, sometimes they're abrasive and abrupt, right?
Hmm.
And the others tend to be too indirect, but they at least try to have the conversation. So what I would add to what you're saying is the beginning of success in offering feedback, in providing feedback, is putting the right people into supervisory or management roles where
Right.
their bent is, yeah, I'm willing to do that. I'm assertive enough. I don't have to be a pain in the butt, but I'm assertive enough to have the conversation. Just teach me how to have it well, right? Just
Right.
teach me how to have it well. And so
Right.
when I, when I've done workshops for years and even have something created online now. Didn't have anything to do during COVID, right? So created an
For
online
sure.
program.
Right. Right.
but, uh, but I'll ask people. I'll say, so t- name a problem you're having with an employee at the present time. And I love doing the program with first line leaders, right? Supervisors, newer managers, and they'll say, well, the person has a bad attitude. They just have a real bad or negative attitude. Somebody else will say, "Well, that person they're constantly late." So, and they'll say, "Well, what would you say?" And I'll say,
Mhm.
"Well, let me think about that." I'd probably bring them in and say, "Hey, I want to talk to you about your bad attitude." You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just talk about and
Right.
say what you're saying to all your peers, right? Because we
Right.
we're talking about it. We're just not talking about it to the employee.
Directly. Yeah, directly.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so the mindset has to be my job is to coach or offer feedback to my people, and if I don't do it, their poor performance is my responsibility, right?
Right, right, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that is exactly right. I mean, those speak straight conversations are directly with the other individual involved. You don't involve anybody else. And really, I think great leaders are able to do that. They don't talk about it with somebody else unless they're asking for advice. They go directly to that person and have that honest conversation. And I think that in that kind of a situation, sometimes the best approach too is ask a question. Hey, I've noticed that you've been late lately. What's happening? Is everything okay? And who knows? I mean, especially in this day and age, maybe there's childcare issues or what have you, and maybe they just aren't willing to talk about it. It questions, I think, my approach is that questions can really help us as leaders more than we know. And I think that if we're willing to ask those questions, then we can be very direct and we can say, hey, you know okay, I appreciate that you're having some issues here. What can we do about it? How do we solve this issue? Let's solve it together.
Mhm.
And when we do that, that brings the other person into the picture and allows them to also really just take some responsibility, because I think that that's part of the equation too.
Yeah, we 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 in my 20 plus years of consulting and coaching, I see leaders, owners of businesses get all worked up. They're all emotional. Somebody's not doing their job right. I remember a guy called me one time. We recruited I think it was an accountant. And I don't know, we were 4, 5, 6 weeks in, and he called me and says, I think I'm gonna have to let, I don't know who it was, Frank go. This is years ago. And I said, oh, really? And so I asked him, well, what's going on with Frank? And I don't even remember what he said, but he said something. I said, so what did Frank say when you talked to him about it? Complete silence.
Yeah.
Go,
That hasn't
oh,
happened
I'm
yet, right?
supposed to talk to my employee? I'm supposed to do that? I thought they're
Yeah.
supposed to be kind of out of the box, ready to go. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're laughing about that, but my experience is that's not that uncommon. That
Yeah,
that
I think
people
you're
do
right.
not want to have these um, speak straight coaching conversations. Have you found that to be true also?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And especially with teams that have worked together for a little while, or have been in the same organization for a while, because there's a relationship there, and they don't want to offend somebody, or they don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. And I think that the reality is that I'm hurting somebody's feelings. I'm hurting their performance if I don't share my perspective. And so that's the real crux of the matter. But yeah, to answer your question, I
Amen.
see that there's a lot of leaders that just are reluctant to move into that space.
Well, for the listeners, I'll share a book. Maybe you want to share a book too. One of the best books on this topic that I've read in the last few years is Radical Candor. I think her
Yes,
name's Lisa
yes,
Scott.
yes.
She tells a story about her first startup. I'm almost certain it's first startup. She became a Google director, or maybe she
Mm,
left Google to do the startup. Doesn't matter. Smart lady, very accomplished, and she had a high level executive team, and the team was like, "Hey, the marketing guy is constantly late. He's not meeting deadlines." And finally, she sat down, you know, and just basically said, "We'll just pick on Frank." I hope there's no Franks out there listening, but Frank, you're not meeting your deadlines and all that. This is a high level guy, right? This isn't some, and so she said, "I'm gonna have to let you go. It's not working out. I have to let you go." In the book, she said his response changed my life forever. She said, "How can you let me go when this is the first conversation we've ever had about my performance or missing deadlines?"
Right.
And
Right.
so she just bowed, right? Because she could see the embarrassment and
Hmm.
the impact that it had on him. And it's the truth.
Right.
It's the truth. One of the rules I live by in coaching my leaders is it should never be a surprise, right?
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Termination should never be a surprise. And so she went on. Radical candor is this idea of being very clear, right?
Hmm.
Speak straight,
Yep.
just very clear, very candid, but at the same time, very kind. And if we're
Yes.
kind and clear, we can make an impact on people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know, I totally agree. Yeah, as you were sharing your book, that's a great book, especially on this topic. The other thing I think that is, there's another book that is, I think is a great book from this perspective is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. He's a former Navy SEAL, and extreme ownership really talks about how we each one have to own our behavior and our approaches. And so when we do that, we can then own our conversations and own that clarity and own that kindness as well. And know that if I think you even said it earlier, look, if my team is not performing, it's my fault because I haven't helped them to be able to be their best, especially if I'm their leader. So yeah, great book though. Great book.
Yeah, I've not heard him speak, but he's a Vistage speaker. We were talking about Vistage earlier,
Yes,
and
yes.
everybody that I hear that's heard him just
He's
said he's
amazing.
awesome. Yeah,
He's
very
amazing. He
good.
came to Pittsburgh about 3 years ago, and I got a chance to meet him. And incredibly intense dude, but awesome speaker. Awesome speaker.
He's a Navy SEAL, right? Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
So let's drill down on some things. I'd really like to pick your brain. We
Sure.
the tagline, kind of the 3 years we'd like to focus on is talent, teams, and culture. So um, let's say, imagine you're going in. It doesn't matter if you're the new leader. Let's use that. So you're a new leader over 25, 30 person company, and maybe there's some negativity. There's some inefficiency. The culture is mediocre at best. The performance is mediocre at best. Um, one of the things I'm toying with, and I'm going to steal your best ideas here. I'm just going to warn you,
That's great.
is I want to teach owners, leaders that they can establish the culture that they want to. Culture isn't random. Culture can be created. And so
Absolutely.
I know you do a lot of work in that area. So share your wisdom and experience with us. If you were to go in and you're the guy, so you have authority. So you don't have to ask anybody permission. And what are the steps you're going to take? Give me 2, 3 minutes on this
Yeah.
that somebody listening here that's struggling, with a small business that they own or a department that they're running, and they want to create a great culture. They want it to be high performing, and it's just not. So
Yeah.
help them out here. What do they need to do?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is that you as the leader not only can make a difference, you are the difference. And so if the culture is not what you want it to be, then you got to look in the mirror to be very candor and kind. It's up to the leader, and our culture can either be by default or by design. And so if I'm that leader, if I'm coming into that new organization and we have, a culture that either is not what I want it to be, or if I have a chance to just make a clean, fresh start, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to define it. And I'm going to define it in terms of behaviors. And what I mean by that is so oftentimes we think of culture as this soft, fuzzy thing, and it's not about ping pong tables and video games in an organization. Truly high performing companies will actually create the behaviors or articulate the behaviors that will lead to their success. We call them fundamentals. So those, it's just like in any sports, you got to practice the fundamentals of the game. So if we articulate that one of the success behaviors in our company is to listen generously, and then it's also a behavior to speak straight, and maybe it's also set and get clear on expectations. So we're gonna create a list of behaviors that will lead to our success. So that's the first thing that I'm going to do, and that list may be, you know, 20 to 25 things long. It could be longer. It could be 30 things, but by defining it first, that's our first step, because we can't create a culture unless we define it first. So once we define it, then just like our mission, vision, and values, oftentimes these things get stuck up on the wall, and that's as far as they go. In my company, we're not going to do that. We're going to define it, and then we're going to practice it, and we're going to create some rituals around that. So that's really the second step, is to create rituals around our behaviors. So what does that look like? Well, what that looks like is that in every meeting that we have in our organization, this is how we're going to start the meeting. We're going to have a brief 2, maybe 3 minute conversation about our fundamental of the week. We're going to take a fundamental or a behavior every week, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to think about it. We're going to find out what gets in the way of us doing that behavior. So think about how many meetings you have in a week, whether it's online, whether it's in person, doesn't matter. If you start every meeting with the fundamental of the week, let's say it's getting clear on expectations. If we talk about that, let's say we have 5 meetings today, 5 meetings today, 5 meetings tomorrow, 5 meetings Thursday. We're going to talk about getting clear on expectations quite a bit, and it's going to be at the top of our mind. So that's going to help us to be able to be better at getting clear on expectations. Next week, it might be listening generously. And so we're going to talk about that. But by virtue of creating this rhythm, by creating these cadences, practicing the behaviors that we've previously defined, that's going to help us to become a high performing company. And so I would urge any business owner, if you're listening right now and you haven't created a list of behaviors, and you got to create these as verbs. It can't be something like respect or something that is a noun, because we need to be able to see it, and we need to be able to give feedback on it. We need to be able to teach it and coach it. And so those would be like the first 3 things that I would say if I'm coming into a company and I want to create a high performing culture, that I would do.
Awesome. Yeah. So I love that. Let me kind of. I can only say amen to everything you just said, but I want to set something next to it,
Yeah, sure.
because I've been kind of playing in the same space, and I think what I would add to that is people will say, right, in the value statement or something, because a lot of big companies will have 3, 4, 5 things that these are our value statement. These are our values:
Right.
service, right,
Mhm.
respect for one another, some sort of well, we'll just. I work a lot in hospitals, so stewardship, right?
Sure.
They want to manage their money well and be good stewards.
Yeah.
So to me, what you've said is uh, the value actualized, operationalized, right? Because
Yes.
right, I agree, and I've even said
Yeah.
something similar. Like too many times we get together, the higher ups, right? The owner maybe by himself, maybe the owner and the executive team, and they come up with the value statement. Hire
Mhm.
somebody to do it in beautiful calligraphy. Hire
That's right.
somebody else to frame it, stick it on a wall, and
Yeah.
never refer to it again.
Right.
And values, and I love what you said about rituals, but values are something that if you're sitting with your team and you're like, man, this is a tough decision that we got to
Mhm.
make here. Um, there's at least two or three options. One's going to cost us some money,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Yeah.
One's going to cost us some money, and yet that's the one that's most consistent with the value on the wall.
Right.
I'm not really thrilled about writing a check, but I love what I think it's Simon Sinek said. It said it's not really a value. It's not really part of your culture unless it costs you something,
Yeah, very true. Very
right?
true. Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Totally
it-
agree. Yeah, and I think that behaviors are the playing out of the values. So it's how we live out our values. And
exactly.
so if we value honesty, let's say, and that's one of our values, we're going to be honest. Well, then doing the right thing always for our client, I mean, that may cost us money. It may
Mhm.
be that, yeah, it's going to cost us money, but we value that. And so that's how our behavior is going to live that out. So yeah, I absolutely agree, Michael.
I had a young lady call me. I'll keep this as generic as possible, but she called me because she and a partner have launched a very successful touring business,
Mm,
and they're doing well. They're doing great. But last year during COVID, had some hiccups, and so
sure.
some people had prepaid, and some of them were calling back and asking for their money back.
Mhm.
And she's 30, 32, bright young lady. So she called me because I've been helping them kind of in their early stages. And she says, Michael, what do we do? I mean, they want their money back. And it was really affirming for me because I told her, I said, I know her real well. I said, do you remember when you were launching this? And I said, you and your partner needed to get together and talk about values.
Yeah,
If you had done that, this would be a very easy decision to make.
yeah.
But because you haven't, now your decision is situational.
Mhm.
What should I do now in this moment based on our financial, health and all that? If it was something you decided, you'd say we have no choice but to honor who we said we were and how we said we'd take care of our customers. And to me, that's the beauty of values is if if they're authentic, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
If they, to your point, right, if they're clearly laid out in behaviors, what do the values look like? What does success here look like? For some
Yeah.
people, it might be working 12-hour days, weekends. For another company, it might be out of here by 5:30 every day, right? So
Right,
it
right.
looks different in different places. But if
Yes.
you articulate them and you put rituals around them, to your point, then when you have those tougher decisions to make, it's like, this is going to be painful. It's going to be a hassle, but it's pretty clear what we need to do if these
Mhm.
values are truly who we are. And if they're not who you are, take them down off the wall and
Exactly.
and rewrite them, right?
Yes, exactly, exactly. I love that. Yeah, it's so true, Michael. And when we predefine what our success looks like, then it makes those decisions so much easier. So yeah, it's a great example, great story.
So give me a story on. I'd love to hear a story in your experience of a team that turned around, a culture they were able to turn around, and kind of what were the building blocks, what were the pivotal pieces in the story that allowed them to really turn around to achieve success.
Yeah. So one that comes to my mind right now is a company that had been, I mean, it's in the manufacturing space, and it had been achieving goals, but nothing spectacular. And it was time for some leadership transition, and we worked with them on their culture and defined their culture. But what we realized is that the leaders within the organization, the team, really wasn't prepared and had the skill set of being able to lead that culture. And so it actually was the thing that created what I now call the emerging leader inner circle. So it's a developmental group where we help the leaders of an organization to be able to learn to do things like delegating and speaking. You can't imagine how many people. I mean, of course, you probably can. They're afraid of speaking, even even on a Zoom in front of their peers. They're afraid of looking bad or what have you. So we help them through that. So this particular organization has transitioned from a leader who is retiring to the next I'll call it the next generation leader, and that leader really has a heart for their people. And so what we did is we created this emerging leader program and helped their leaders, their I'll call them their second and third tier leaders, to be able to really get some skills to be able to help think creatively, gain confidence, and communicate a lot better. And what that's done for this organization is that, quite frankly, it's a shining star. They not only met budget, but they exceeded budget in the pandemic year. And it's really all to do with their leaders being able to navigate change and to be uncomfortable and getting outside of their comfort zone. And so it's been a really cool example of what can happen in an organization when we really invest in our leaders and we really see the potential in the people that are in our organization. And not only is it an example of what can happen, but it's an attraction force. I mean, it's a magnetic force, because we talked a little bit earlier about attraction and talent acquisition. Well, what better way to have talent coming to you because they want to work with you, because you invest in people, you care for people, and you help them to be the best version of themselves that they can be. This particular manufacturing organization has been doing some amazing things, and especially in the pandemic season that we've been through. So that's just one story that is kind of comes to the top of my mind, because I really believe that the companies who are willing to work with their people and help them to grow and develop, those are the companies that people are going to want to work for.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. Do you how do you deliver that training to your clients?
Yeah, yeah, it's all virtual. So we have a virtual environment twice a month, and then once a year we get together at a summit. So, matter of fact, it was just a week or so ago that we had our in-person inner circle summit. And actually, we did it this year a little bit of a hybrid, because we knew some people couldn't make it here to the Pittsburgh region. So we had some people in person. We had some people online. We actually had somebody watching the live stream from Slovakia, of all places. And so it was really kind of a neat environment. We had people from all over the world. So pretty exciting.
Very cool, very cool. Well, it's really been great to hear kind of your side of things and your perspective when I'm thinking about my journey. You just never know what can happen, right? From the smallest
Yeah,
things. So a friend of mine introduced me to a gentleman who was the chief learning officer for Norton Healthcare, which is a large health services provider here in Louisville.
yeah.
And Al invited me to speak to the local Training and Development Association, American Society for Training and Development. And he says, just do 20, 30 minutes. And so I did. And he said, that wasn't bad. Why don't you come and talk to my managers? So I'm just getting started. This is like '07. I think I joined the NSA, National Speaker Association, in like January of '05 or '06. So I'm still kind of finding my way here. And so I said, sure, I'd be happy to do that. And so I met with him, and it turned out to be a half a day in front of 525 of his hospital managers and leaders.
Oh man.
And I developed that because he was attracted to what you and I are talking about, this idea of clear, what was it? Um,
Getting clear on expectations or
Getting clear
speaking
and
straight.
yeah, shooting straight, that
Yeah, speak
idea.
straight.
So
Hmm.
couched in kind of this coaching mindset, because you're hearing, right? And it's not, back then it was just nurses, how hard it was to find nurses, how to find
Sure.
talent in the healthcare environment because everybody needs it. Now it's everywhere, right?
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
so here's, I guess, and I'll give you the last word, but here's the point I would leave with the listeners is the greatest gift you can give your people, the greatest gift you can give your customers is to invest in your leadership, especially first line leaders, the people who are touching the people who touch your customers every day. Because the a bad leader, an ineffective, weak leader runs good people off. And when your people aren't happy, I'm going to quote Simon Sinek again. He said, "Don't ask your employees to love your customers um, unless you love them first."
Right.
Right?
Right.
I
Right.
mean, we need to take care of our people, and the
Yeah.
best way to slow retention or increase retention, to slow turnover and increase performance, is to invest in your leadership team. So I'm really
Mhm.
excited about the work that you do because I think it's absolutely critical to company success. So I'll give you the last word, and then we'll sign off.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I couldn't agree more, Michael. I mean, I really believe that that when the people of an organization are growing and flourishing and able to really expand their potential, that's when the company can grow and expand its potential as well. Because let's face it, I mean, companies are people. And so when we're able to help our people to be more than they are today and really expand the potential that's within them, give them the confidence that they need to do that and the skills that they need to do that. I mean, that can transform not only an organization, it can transform communities. And so I just wholeheartedly say amen to what you just said as well, Michael. We've got to be able to keep developing our leaders and really help everyone within our organization to feel valued and to be seen and heard so that they can be contributors because everyone wants to work at a place where they feel valued and they have a purpose and they can contribute. And so when that happens, I mean, wonderful things happen and we can achieve our missions that as organizations then.
Agreed. David, tell the listeners how they can find you on the internet or otherwise reach you.
Sure, sure. LinkedIn is a great place to reach me, David McGlennen. I also have a website, davidmcglennon.com. If you want to catch my podcast, it's in the growth space, and we often will talk to leaders like you're doing here today, and really learn from their stories and their experience as well. So I love being able to learn from others.
Yeah, very good. You've been listening to High Performance with Michael Duke. You can find more information about me at michaelduke.com or about my online training at michaeldukeacademy.com. David, it's been a pleasure. Have a great day. Thank you, everyone. Until next time.
Thanks, Michael.